Welcome and thanks for joining me today as I share results from our paper, Feature Creep or Just Plain Creepy, How Advances in Smart Technologies Affect Attitudes Toward Data Privacy. In recent years, we've seen an explosion in the Internet of Things and smart technologies designed to make our lives easier. In this paper, we set out to evaluate one of the most popular IoT devices, smart speakers, which are built on technology we refer to as intelligent personal assistants, or IPAs. As privacy scholars, we were most interested in the privacy risks smart speakers may pose and how consumers engage in decision-making around using or not using these devices in their homes. First, however, I want to share a brief overview of the Internet of Things. IoT refers to a network of interconnected computing components, digital and mechanical objects, and living organisms. IoT devices share data with the cloud and allow remote access, such as turning lights on and off, monitoring contents in your refrigerator, or adjusting your home's temperature. IoT devices are found everywhere, from workplaces to homes to your car, and include light switches, appliances, thermostats, digital assistants, door locks, and much more. Gartner estimates that this year, 2020, there will be more than 20 billion IoT devices, up from just 8 billion 3 years ago. Many of these devices are used in smart homes, which refers to the ecosystem of devices that collect data from a variety of sensors throughout your home. IoT devices collect a lot of data about the environment around them to function, as well as to learn and improve their functionality. For example, Nest thermostats learn about your routine and try to predict the optimal temperature based on past behaviors. The Nest also nudges you to meet certain goals that will lower your energy bill, often by setting the temperature colder in the winter and warmer in the summer. Smart speakers are the latest iteration of intelligent personal assistants. IPAs embedded in smartphones like Apple's Siri and Google's Assistant have been popular for years. The standalone home devices like Amazon's line of Echo devices and Google's Home device are more recent but have become very popular due to their low cost and simple design. By the end of 2019, approximately 25% of Americans had purchased a smart speaker. The IPA software has been integrated into other formats as well, most notably as an upgrade in cars. Beyond that, smart speakers are increasingly common in places outside the home, including university dorms and hotel chains. And in the last couple of years, the technology has evolved beyond just audio to include video features for users. So we've established that smart speakers are popular and have high utility in the home. The devices also raise some important privacy and security concerns, which I'll talk about next. Here are a few headlines from 2018 highlighting one of the biggest concerns about smart speakers. The devices collect audio data from users, then store that data, perhaps indefinitely. There are a number of ways in which problems could emerge, such as sharing recordings with unauthorized others or recording sensitive information. More dramatically, smart speaker data might be used in criminal cases, such as the bottom headline where police wanted to access audio from a smart speaker in a home where there had been a murder. IPAs rely on cloud computing, with devices transmitting a large amount of users' behavioral data through the internet. In the event of a data breach, an adversary could access users' IPA history and potentially use this information to infer people's lifestyles and behavioral patterns. Cybersecurity researchers have also shown IPAs to be vulnerable to attacks using hidden or inaudible voice commands. This brings us to the research questions for our present study. First, how do users and non-users navigate privacy concerns related to these devices? And second, how do their attitudes toward IPAs shift as the technology evolves? So how did we conduct this research? This study builds on a larger project of IPA users and non-users at 2 universities in the United States. Based on survey responses, we then invited people to participate in focus groups, and we divided those focus groups into all users of IPAs, all non-users, as well as mixed groups. So these included users and non-users in them. In total, we had 11 focus groups, including 65 participants. During these focus groups, Participants discussed a range of things, including how and why they did or did not use IPA devices, their thoughts on the evolution of this technology over time, and broader concerns about the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. Once the data was collected and transcribed, we imported the transcripts into Deduce for coding. We developed a codebook based on the interview protocol. Each team member then coded a transcript separately before meeting as a group to finalize the codebook. During this process, new codes were added and others were collapsed. Next, each transcript went through 2 rounds of coding involving textual microanalysis, which involves line-by-line coding to identify emergent themes in the corpus. Excerpts from each code were then exported into Excel for additional analysis. On this slide, you can see the 6 codes we focused on for this paper. And now I'll briefly summarize our findings. When talking to IPA users about their adoption of the technology, many rationalized this decision by invoking the nothing to hide trope. This is a common argument to encourage people to be more forthcoming with information. If you're not doing anything wrong, you should have nothing to hide. Glenn Greenwald, the journalist best known for his reporting on Edward Snowden, quickly dismantles this argument by saying that if people have nothing to hide, they would be okay with handing over login information for various accounts, and nobody has ever taken him up on that offer. One of our participants echoed this idea when he said, "If you're going to be that concerned about a device listening in, chances are you're probably doing something you really don't want other people overhearing." Others suggested their lives weren't interesting enough to warrant any kind of surveillance or harm from using the device. A related trope, privacy is dead, is commonly used to describe life in the social media era. Among our participants, some noted that the government and businesses already knew everything about them, so they might as well get some benefit from data collecting devices. For example, one participant said, "I feel like a lot of these companies are collecting these data anyway. I don't like that they do it, but if they're going to collect it, I'd rather you get the most utility out of it as possible." For non-users, privacy concerns played a role in many people's decision not to use IPA devices. While IPA users might have rationalized their use by saying the company already had their data, non-users talked about wanting to minimize the data these tech giants had about them. Participants also brought up recent news articles highlighting problems with the Amazon Echo, where a bug led some devices to emit the sound of laughter without any prompts, and the Google Home, which had a defect where the button to listen was constantly engaged. For Gwen, a mixture of concerns related to privacy, security, and trust influenced her decision to avoid many IoT devices. She said, "I think there's a bit of a trust factor for me. I don't really trust the corporations, so I'm only willing to let them into parts of my life where I'm like, okay, this is really useful. And I also think as we get more smart devices around the home, it's just easier for them to be hacked, and I think that's going to happen more and more." Now let's move on to the second research question. Initially only available on smartphones, IPA technology has expanded into a variety of home devices, including recent versions with cameras and screens. Features in newer versions of smart speakers aim to reduce friction between the user and the task they want to accomplish, which requires the device to have greater access to user data. Throughout our focus groups, participants discussed their discomfort with these features, and across both users and non-users, participants described newer forms of IPA technologies and smart technologies more broadly as creepy, which echoes previous research looking at user perceptions of data collection by mobile apps. A major concern about these devices, and especially the home versions, was a lack of certainty about when they were listening and capturing conversations. Renee suggested that explicit triggering features were what kept them from entering the creepy territory. Others described experiences that seemed to reinforce their belief that the devices were listening at all times by sharing examples of the device being activated without the trigger word being said. In all focus group sessions, participants viewed an Amazon-produced Echo Show commercial and then discussed it. In several sessions, a related product, the Echo Look, was also discussed because it shared the camera feature with the Echo Show. While some participants pointed to benefits of these more advanced IPAs, the word creepy emerged repeatedly, without prompting, by users and non-users in nearly all focus groups. The main feature that provoked strong responses from participants after watching the commercial was the drop-in feature, which Amazon describes as a two-way intercom. For this feature to work, users create a list of approved contacts they can connect with. Once the contact approves this privilege, they can instantly connect via audio on the original Echo and Echo Dot, or video on the Echo Show. One participant who had used the drop-in feature on her Echo Dot described the tension between feeling connected to her family and being too connected. She said, "I don't need them to call me at every minute of the day. If it tells them I'm active, they know I'm home, and if I don't answer, I get a text message. Hey, where are you? I just tried to call you." I'm trying to find the balance between that. Participants' comments also reflected a sense of weariness toward more invasive technologies that required them to think more about things that could go wrong, such as the camera positioning or being careful about what you say near a device. So, what are the takeaways from these findings? We can look at them in light of several privacy frameworks that are used in privacy research. First, we have privacy calculus, which is a commonly applied framework that posits consumers engage in a cost-benefit analysis to make decisions about whether to share personal information. However, this framework may oversimplify the complex decision-making associated with newer technologies, including smart speakers. In fact, Joseph Turow and his colleagues have argued that Americans are increasingly willing to share personal information in exchange for benefits, not because they engage in a rational decision-making process about the trade-offs. Rather, Americans have become deeply resigned to sharing their data, believing they have no control or agency to manage it. This resignation was seen in participants' comments about not having privacy anymore, and is referred to by Turow as the trade-off fallacy. Our participants' comments highlighted the networked nature of privacy that distributes privacy management and information sharing across multiple parties, including the individual, the company or service being used, and potentially other users. This shared ownership can make one feel like they lack control over their data. Smart speakers create new anxiety by bringing recording devices into the home and normalizing data collection in traditionally private spaces like one's bedroom. In order to work effectively, users are encouraged to enable these devices to be always on, reducing the friction between an information need or task request and the device's capability to complete that task. Shoshana Zuboff, in her work on surveillance capitalism, argues that friction is the flip side of convenience, with companies wanting to minimize friction between consumers and technology. It may be that we need to reintroduce some of this friction into these devices to regain a sense of the boundaries between public and private spaces and information. Finally, we observed increasing concerns associated with feature creep of IPA devices. Overall, participants in our focus groups expressed greater concerns about IPAs that were always listening and didn't require an explicit action like pushing a button to activate them. These concerns increased when cameras were added to more recent versions like the Echo Look and Show, and many expressed concerns related to the uncertainty around when devices collected data and what happened to that collected data. This is especially concerning when considering that many people lack the digital literacy to understand data collection practices of these devices and requires additional research to identify the best ways to inform consumers about data collection. And with that, I want to thank you for listening. For more information about this and related research, see our website mobileprivacy.umd.edu.